Hey, 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 and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Owl Bob. And how are you doing today?
In the settlements that people are judging it by the ones you've been talking about, but they don't recognize that there's a tremendous amount of vitality and growth and community. And so I'm just saying that I've seen several interviews lately that tell me that there's something quite unique about Jews in gathering and being part of, because they're Africans, they're Chinese.
Okay, so the interesting thing is,
they're Spanish, they're British, they're
well, that gives hope to the idea that a good outcome could happen from. But are those guys taking the word of the Zionists, or are they trying to make relationships with the Palestinians that are there?
Well, it's surprising how many are trying to make relationship with Palestine.
Okay, so when those people step up to protect the Palestinians, when they use the guns that Mossad has given them to shoot the Palestinians, but they use those to step in the way of the IDF and the other people who want to kill the Palestinians, what do you think is going to happen then?
Well, the fly in the ointment, as I've talked about numerous times, these Palestinians just don't have their act together. They still want to. They cannot explain what river to the sea, Palestine will be free means, and they won't change it. They won't say it doesn't mean free of Jews.
So that's my academic friend who goes on and on about the real problem with the war in Gaza is that the Palestinians don't know how to play the game, right? They throw rocks, And I try to say, well, there's a real difference between a $100,000 a 2,000 pound bomb that we're paying for. That is, basically when it's detonated above the ground by about 10, 20 feet, it's like a nuclear weapon. It wipes out half of a football field. If anything that's there, it's gone, it's fire, it's dead, it's in pieces. Now that's a little more deadlier than a rock. Right? Now we are experiencing a planetary thing. All of this stuff that's going on, it's all going on at once for a reason. So we're not seeing what's really going on, and everything that's going on in the Gaza Strip is going on in your neighborhood. It's like you hear all these cars. When I'm sitting on my friend's porch, it's a small little road. It's not a main road. Yet all the main roads are destroyed over in this neck of the woods. So they're all on this small road, and it's tearing it up. I've shown you films of it, and no one slows down either. It's like mind-boggling. When I came into town to run my errands, it was really surreal, in that they were like going after. Meaning, I'm going slow, trying not, because my little car is like 6 inches off the ground, right? And I don't have a gigantic truck that has a foot and a half of clearance, and I don't have gigantic tires, so my car can fit into one of these gigantic, holes in the road, potholes. But it's not the size of a pot, it's the size of a car. So I go slow, and if I have to go through it, I go through. And anyway, some guy came around the corner, and he just jacked his horn and was screaming at me for, what are you doing? God says, well, And then he pulled off, and he was in an F-250. It was about 2 feet high off the ground, and he had a Florida license plate. So that's basically a Zionist in perspective to the poor collar folks that are being basically wiped out. All the roads around me, it takes me an hour. And it used to take me 15 minutes to get to a certain point and then head into town. It takes me an hour to get to that point. I don't go anywhere. So no one, is around. And all I would hear is an occasional, big gigantic dump truck taking rock to some building site until that culvert, which was 40 foot high, kind of collapsed underneath one of those rock trucks. Right? And parts of the road were like caving and falling off the cliff. And did they stop the traffic? No. Oh, there's nothing wrong. And there's 6 places along that highway where a gigantic rock face of a mountain that was disturbed by the flood above it, they're all teetering to fall down. One did fall down and smashed into the highway, so it took out another big chunk of the highway, and then kept going down into the valley, and luckily stopped like that close from taking out a trailer camp. And that's what's happening here. And if I was just talking to a friend of mine who's worked in the State Department. He's kind of retired, so he has a good ear on what's going on. And he said basically, the United States is not, and there are no. What you have to realize that the United States isn't made up of these separate individual um, countries that are, have their own rights and privileges and laws and constitutions. No, we live in a corporate slave planet, right? And all of these countries are in it, right? That little thing that was done in the Oval Office with Carrot Head and drug addict mom, vice president, and the stand-up comedian. It was like a scripted soap opera. You don't have the cards. And I can bring peace in one day, and it would make sense for Vladimir to basically go for a ceasefire. He could he's losing 1,000 people a day. Yeah, he's got almost 200 million people in Russia, but that's still a lot of people. That's a lot of families. That's going to be a lot of, at some point, political blowback. I mean, the Russians, the Soviet Union collapsed basically because the people of Russia had it with the 10-year war that they had in Afghanistan. Now, they only lost 10,000 guys. Russia has lost over 1 million people. And so has, Ukraine has lost somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million. I'm quite sure. Right? And that's including innocent people in their apartment houses. Now, people in Russia haven't really been, the average citizen in Russia isn't being attacked. That doesn't mean that they're not. Meaning, if Ukraine can bring in their drones and take out some of the most valuable military sites in Russia that has big time air defense, Russia, if it shoots off one of those S-400 missiles, that's $20 million, right? If you are shooting a $20 million anti-aircraft missile to take out a $2,000 drone, anyway. So you can see the strangeness of all this stuff. None of it makes sense, right? Common sense. Vlad has a lot of property. He's got a lot of people right on the border. This is the time to have to go to the desk and look at us in Vietnam. We had about over the 20 years we were there, we probably had 50 ceasefires. Right? Kissinger would go to North Korea, and now look, not Korea, North Vietnam, and now Vietnam, the socialist state that it is, instead of Saigon, it's Ho Chi Minh City. they're one of our best allies in Southeast Asia. You know, the little domino thing didn't quite work. So that's what we are looking at. We're looking at a corporate fascist. And what is fascism? It was, didn't exist until um, Benito Mussolini wrote his basic PhD thesis, and it's brilliant. I mean, I read it a couple of times. It's very, very, very good. And basically, he said, fascism is, a reprint of the Roman uh, part of their empire, right? Where the rich people basically ran everything, right? The plutocrats. And that's one of the reasons why Rome fell. It's because they had this inside crew of plutocrats who just were stealing the empire blind, and basically they had all the rules, all the laws. One of those senators, brought in his goat to be a senator, and they made him a legal senator. Anyway, so we're just replaying that, right? And so Mussolini said what fascism is. So communism is when capital is run by the people, allegedly, right, through their duly elected officials in the state, right? And that's communism, right? Capitalism is when the corporate entities basically run the government, um, but it's has a veneer of we're democratic, right? And now we can see that that hasn't been the case. And when you take everything that Joe Biden did in the last 4 years and everything that Donnie did in the 4 years before JoJo, and you put them up against each other, and you also look at what Carrot Head has done in the last, less than 100 days, uh, you will see that they're virtually the same, meaning the outcomes, the money expenditures, all of them, right? And JoJo was cutting back on the safety net and the this and the that, but he was doing it in such a way that you couldn't, unless you really took the time and studied every line of what he was doing, you didn't realize it. But Don, Carrot Head, he is doing it right out in front of everyone, doing it right in your face. And basically, what he's going to do is collapse the economic and political bias of America. Right? We were number one. Our military is not number one. Right? We have these big aircraft carrier, Gerald Ford aircraft carriers that cost almost $1 trillion a piece that have 5 to 10,000 people on board. Well, they're in the Red Sea, they're in the Black Sea, they're in the Mediterranean Sea. These are all, they're not seas. They're like big lakes, and it takes like 20 miles for a aircraft carrier to, how many miles does it take an aircraft carrier to make a turn?
God, at least 5.
At least.
At least 5.
Right, if not 20.
Yeah, if not 20.
But there's no...
Because you really don't even, unless you've seen one, you really don't understand how big
it
are.
is. Right. Yes. Yep.
And what's crazy is there's just as much under the water as there is on top of the water.
Yeah, if not more under.
If not
so that
more.
means it's more of a target down there.
Right.
So they have so much resources in the Middle East, right, that if things ever kicked off, I'm sure Iran, if they unloaded everything, they could take out an aircraft carrier. And if they did that, costing almost $1 trillion and 5,000 guys' lives, look what we did for 9/11. What would we do with that? I wish people would get a little more involved and not so, our side is better than your side. I mean, that is such a waste of time. Anyway, but today is a beautiful day. So, you gonna quit nicotine someday?
Yeah, I've been slowing down a lot.
Does do you get to? Have you gotten the smoker cough?
No.
No.
Nope.
Well, if you could quit before you get that, you know. But you know, nicotine is the most addictive substance, worse than crack or meth or anything. And that you can buy that in any store you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point now where you can buy marijuana in the store and you got to buy eggs on the street.
Oh, can you grow herb in our state?
No. Virginia, you can do up to eight plants.
Right.
Personally on
your own neck of the woods,
Mhm.
right? How about North Carolina? Do they? What do they?
No, it has to be in a state that is marijuana is either decriminalized or legal.
Right. I wonder, you know, if Trump's the kind of guy, I could see him
Listen,
signing
if
executive
you
order.
want to be the president to
Yeah.
bring revenue in and get us out of debt,
Legalize
you legalize marijuana on a federal level.
Right.
And the taxes alone would
And not only that, it would
be more than cigarettes.
it would cut half of the arrests.
You ever go to states that have marijuana?
Yeah.
You ever seen their roads?
Yeah. Great.
Great. Because they use
They
that
got money,
and
right.
put it back into the state.
Right.
Why not?
But
But Tennessee is this is your old Bible Belt, brother.
right.
Hell, we ain't had liquor but 5-6 years in Mountain City.
I know.
So, you know what I mean? That's just booze.
Yeah.
Imagine the heart attacks that they would have over
Marijuana.
And that's the thing is it's always had a bad name, but it ain't.
Well, you know, the bad
Cigarettes and booze are worse for you
than anything.
than anything. Right.
And marijuana was, you know why marijuana became illegal federally? Because Harvard, you know, the black chemist who invented everything, right? He showed that you could just grow your lawn along with hemp, like have a quarter acre of hemp,
Right.
chew it up, distill it, and you could put it in your car.
Oh wow.
Yes, you could grow your own gasoline.
That's why I would see that.
That's why they got rid of it. And they blamed it on black. When black people smoke it, they become insane. You know, it's like, yes.
That marijuana Reefer Madness movie is the epitome of false information
Yep, yes.
that the government put out to
It's called
society.
propaganda, yeah.
Propaganda.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Well, everything we get is propaganda. I mean, what I love about Donnie is that he lies so much, he tells the truth. It's like,
Hey, but what's funny is nobody realizes what you got yourself into.
right.
You have seen him your whole life.
Right.
I've seen him.
Me too. I
Be
lived
a
in New York.
philanthropist,
Yes.
a playboy. He used to take pictures in the Playboy Mansion
Yeah.
all the time with women all over it.
Yep.
And to think that he is your Christian delegate,
Yes.
that's your ultimate right there. That's
Right.
your ultimate flip flop
Yep.
of
The 180.
a 180 to
Yep.
say that this is your rank.
He's Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
Right.
You know?
Well,
Now, if you go to other Republican presidents that were through time, this is your first, dude. Now, Reagan, he was an actor. I get it.
Yes.
He had his fame through movies.
right.
But he wasn't a Playboy actor
Right.
that day.
Right. He was,
A philanthropist
yes,
that had millions,
right.
that was known for having the nicest hotel. And if you want to stay and be treated like Trump, you come stay at this hotel.
Right.
You know?
But you had to be his friend to get that service.
At that time, right. You
Right.
had to be in the clique. It was
Right.
for the upper.
Yeah. For his
The
buzz.
2%ers, the
Right, his
5%ers.
buzz. But the way that the rich are bending the knee to him, the way ABC and CBS, because it was so much cheaper to give him 15 grand. That's a grift. You know, that, what do they call that when you go get protection money from Mrs. Smith at the drugstore, you know?
And plus, that scandal with that girl,
Yeah.
that woman,
Yeah.
well, to me, it ain't a scandal. He paid her to shut her fucking mouth.
Right.
And she broke the terms.
Right.
So why are we talking about
it?
If anybody should be in trouble, it's her.
Not only
she took the money. Doesn't matter what happened.
Right.
She took the money.
Right. But,
for her hush.
Right. But the thing is, why he didn't. She out Donald him, meaning if he wanted to go after her, he'd have to go to court, and then Discovery would bring out all of this other shit, and so he goes into court when they're having that thing where he becomes a felon 30-something times, and what's he do? Shit his pants the whole freaking time, just so everyone has to suffer his smell.
Hello, little bird. You didn't have to leave.
Well, you move too fast. You had to. If I move so slow, the animals don't run away.
Oh, look at that state trooper. He's out today making his rounds.
Yeah, making his bid. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know what he told me?
No.
I said, Chris, tell me what's your rule so I know that when I'm out here.
Yeah.
He said, 10 over, you're fine. 15 over, your ass is mine. Because he said it ain't worth me pulling you over to give you
a ticket for 10.
A ticket for 10.
Right.
But 15?
Yeah.
That's where I get you.
Right.
I said, God almighty.
And you know, this town, this neck of the woods, there is no racial profiling because we're all white here.
That's it. They ain't hardly know. And if they are, you know who they are.
Yeah, right. And the other side of the coin is where it's going to become really self-evident because the rich people coming in and paying off all the politicians, there will be discrimination over class. The people with the beat-up cars. And you see all the Mexicans, they got nice cars because they know they won't. The nicer the car is.
That's right. Well, plus two, you got to remember, they came here from nothing.
Right.
And they worked for that.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
They ain't none. You don't see none of the Mexicans on damn living in village.
No.
You see 10 of them in one house, and the next thing you know, the house gets built onto and bigger and bigger.
And
they progress.
I mean, you look on all the big farmhouses around here. That's from the 19th century. That's what happened with those guys. They came from Germany and Sweden.
It. And they all bundled up together. And the next thing you know, like, when you go to Spartanburg, dude, there is a Thai Laos neighborhood where everybody in that motherfucker is either Thai
or Laos.
Everybody, dude, one moved in, a house came for sale, another one, and then they got their own little neighborhood.
Yep. Well, and that's the American way.
Houston, Vietnamese.
Yes.
Big Vietnamese.
Oh, yeah. Big
in Houston.
Yeah. So and that's the problem with, the real deal is that the white people are getting fewer and fewer. And they wanted to go, make America great again is back in the 16th century when white men owned all the property, their wives were property, everything was, and that's
women couldn't even get a bank account.
Right. Until the 50s. Until the 1950s.
That's what gets me. I'm like, so if you were a rich woman back then, you had to have a man.
Or a good lawyer.
Right. To be able to.
Who was a man.
Right. Exactly. Who was a man.
Not a good lawyer who was a woman, but.
What it comes down to. Just the little things that you look at. And it's crazy to look at it at our time.
And
but it existed. It happened.
And the only reason why we got the Civil Rights Act of 64, 5, and 7 is that LBJ was the most racist motherfucker you could ever think of. But he realized that because of Jim Crow, the black community in America was the 7th largest economy in the world. And he went to all his Southern buddies and go, listen, you guys, you hate poor people as much as the blacks, but now the blacks they own half of your town. Yes, it's in the black, but their houses are nicer, their schools are better because they're putting their own money that above the state so their kids are going to get into college. And that's what's happening to all these colleges. The people who are going, there are more women graduating college with STEM degrees, right? And these guys, so we want, when that airplane crashed 4 days after he blamed it on a DEI midget, or whatever. And then the vice president said, well, what we need is, white men who know what they're doing to run the government. And,
yeah, that's what we need.
And that's what we got. Really? We got Elon Musk. And that guy, if that guy isn't on drugs, I don't know who is.
Yeah, but he's on the same stuff as Michael Jackson. He has a doctor that comes and puts it in him and has it measured out.
Yeah. But he's still.
Yeah, but you know what? There's got to be something to him because he knows how to make money.
I tell you what he is? He's a poster boy. There are people behind him with the power and the money. He is just, and all of these guys who are in the cabinet who are billionaires, every one are dumber than a rock. They didn't make their money, and they are basically there as a scapegoat. Meaning they're going to be blamed. And that's why Donald Trump said, when this place hits the skids and we become a banana republic, never able to be getting back. I mean, if we have a tussle.
Well, when did COVID hit? Right when you had Trump had 1 year.
Yeah.
And COVID hit.
Right. And then he screwed the pooch on that. You would think those 4 years, and I kept telling people, listen, you already had 4 years of this guy. If you give him another 4, he will do the same, but he will have known where all his mistakes were. And not only that, he's got this thing called the Heritage Foundation that has ungodly amount of money and about 10,000 really sharp whack job lawyers and just going in there. And they're not changing the laws. They're just going into these governmental organizations like the IRS, scraping all the data into their own thing so they can use it. And then unplugging all the servers so the people who work there can't even get in because their badges don't work. You know, it's like
control.
Yes. And it's not like this isn't what America has always been. It's just like it's like in The Wizard of Oz when Toto pulls the curtain away, you know. You see a guy in a Brooks Brothers suit back there with the knobs and the switches, you know. So the real interesting thing is what the Americans are going to do.
Yeah.
You know, all the guys I know who are trumpets are still, well, he's got balls to do this. Yeah, balls to fuck you up. You know?
I like how they talk about, you know, you wake up and you hear about the stock and the trade, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then from my perspective, when me and 75, I would say 80% of the United States,
right,
that has no relative on my life.
Right.
Because I'm working just to get by.
Right.
And to raise my kids.
Right.
And make sure they have enough.
Right.
I don't have that money to put.
Yeah, but you if you work for a corporation
and
or the government,
you
got a 406.
Right.
Those are people getting fucked, right?
Yes, and how many times have we seen it happen?
Just in the last 20 years.
20 years.
6 times.
6 times. We have seen
How
people,
stupid can you be?
How stupid? That's what I'm saying. I'm like, so you think this major corporation with this guy making $1 billion or
trillion,
making 20-30 million a quarter,
right?
Where do you think he's pulling that? They're pulling that money from your account.
Yes, exactly.
Your account.
Your account.
And then when there's no money, they go, we'll file bankruptcy.
Yes, and we're too big to go bankrupt. So the government will bail us out.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's
and then you got all these people who lost everything, you know, their whole life. They said they believed in their system.
Yep.
You give us 10%, and at the end of your days, we'll take care of it.
My father was one of those people. You know, he was a boy. He was Italian. He was born in 1911, and as an Italian boy, he was like being a nigger. It's like being from Mexico, right? But he was really handsome, a great athlete. And his father was a northern Italian, a lot of white in him. So he didn't look dark. He had the real curly hair, but he had white skin. But he was really handsome, and he was the best football player. And in the 1930s, when he was playing football, first for high school and then college, they had no professional. So the mob bet high school football was more a moneymaker because there were more games. They could have this town bet on that, right? And so he was like, the mobsters treated him like a movie star. I mean, he had pictures of him in the New York fucking Times.
Yeah.
So that was my dad. Then he went in the Air Force and was a colonel and blah, blah, blah. Success story, blah, blah, blah. I married my mom, who's like Marilyn Monroe. If you took Adolf Hitler and Marilyn Monroe and put them together, that's my mom. Really brilliant. So she came up with the business ideas and basically made everything work. My dad was a good salesman, blah, blah, blah. And, but in the '08 crash, he had all his money in real estate and in stock. And I had kind of got him into real estate. And then in '06, I bailed on everything. I sold everything, bought gold, right? And what happened, I told my guy, I said, listen, I don't want to buy stock in a gold company. I don't want storage. I want the gold. And he said, I got it. Well, he didn't do that. So I didn't lose my shirt, but I could have made a lot more money. Right? And so I said, well, that's, you didn't, I expressly said to do this. And you said, well, I didn't think you really wanted. I said
that.
I wanted
to touch it.
Yes, I wanted the real deal.
Possession.
I wanted to put it in my safety deposit box. That's the size of a garage in my bank. So I wanted it to go there. And he didn't do that. And then was right at that switchy thing, and I wasn't really paying attention. I said, did you get the gold? Yes, I did. And so I pulled everything out of that. And I sold everything. It's did say to diamond. And I waited for it to come back up to where it was, like around 2011. And that's when money was free. I took that and bought more real estate after I sold it all. And then when everyone was going gaga about it before, I died in 2014, I sold everything. And I gave it all away. Right? When I came back, I wasn't really dead. I was only dead, but not really dead. I said, okay, what killed me was that 20 years of making all that money and that high life and the corporate world I lived in. And I weighed almost 400 pounds.
Golly.
That's why do you think my knees and hips are the way they are? I burned them out. So anyway, but it's a beautiful day. And I don't owe anybody any money. And I own my little, people don't realize. So I own my little piece of heaven outright. But the way the law is, it could be taken away from me. The bank could, there are lots of national security things. Oh, no one can own property now. And you all have to live together. I mean, we really are heading into some, we've lived this way before. We've had like the collapses, in 20 years. The same thing happened 6 times in a row. My parents basically just died. In '08, they just died. The medical scene was, my dad had to get a total transfusion every 8 months. And he said, I want to kill myself. I said, Dad, you don't have to get messy. Just don't get that procedure. And within, a year, you'll be dead. And he was dead in 6 months. My mom died. She was great. She did it her way. My dad, he was your basic crazy Italian. And every time he pissed her off, he'd buy her a nice piece of diamond jewelry, right? So she had about $500,000 worth of stuff. And when my parents were going down the drain, my sisters would call me up 2 or 3 times because I was taking care of my parents. Are they dead yet? Are they dead yet? Right? And my mom realized this. And she basically threw $250,000 worth of diamonds in the garbage. And so when she died, and they went through her jewelry box, they found a letter saying, "Sorry, cunts, I threw it away."
Oh my gosh!
That's like I said, Adolf Hitler, Marilyn Monroe. Sorry, cunts. And my mom, I had 6 brothers and sisters, and she tortured all of them. I was the youngest, and I watched this at a young age and decided never to mess with my mom, right? And to stay away from my dad when he hadn't eaten anything, and get out of the house as fast as I could. I started working when I was 9. I moved because New York was great. Half of New York was abandoned buildings. I lived up in Harlem in the federal courthouse building that closed it down in the 70s. Moved in there in the 80s. Everything was mahogany. And, had like a 20,000 square foot house. And I had my own subway stop. they closed it. So I had to get off at 76 and walk on that little thing. Right. But that's how would get in. So I take a date home. We get off at 76th Street and walk 40 blocks in the subway tunnel, and they come out in this like magnificent building. Those were the good old days.
Richard!
No.
There he is.
We know.
The homeboy.
Huh?
You're the homeboy.
Homeboy.
What are you doing today, Richard?
Working on my little Honda. It's
Well,
something I
Honda.
want, something I like to do. I should be doing something I don't want to do.
No. Do the things you like to do. No.
Yeah, but nobody will do the things you don't want to do.
Well, then don't do them.
I'm a house keeper, hey man.
Yes, I'm a housekeeper too.
Mine's hard work.
Mine's halfway now.
I done laundry.
You guys should come over to my place. The rats took over for the winter. I had to move out. I had to live in a tent. And then I kind of totally nuked the place. But rats, I always thought the raccoons were worse. They were like bad teenagers. These guys are like psychopaths.
What are they?
Rats.
Oh my God, get rid of them.
Oh, I did. I got rid of them. But the damage, I mean, just, you can't believe. Here, I'll show you a picture.
I never had rats, but one time I had hogs.
Yeah.
And I kept,
They're worse. They're big rats.
yeah, and my neighbors, their barn burned down, and
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that barn was burning.
Before you go
down.
in, take a look at this.
Bunch of rats right
Oh,
through my
God.
barn. I'm standing there saying, get, and them
Here.
rats come running right into my barn.
God!
Hey, come here, Jay. Come here. Okay,
Hold on, I gotta get some done.
okay, take a look at this. So there's one of the big rats right there. This is my little garage. This is where they took over. Now, I have tons of stuff in there. From all the years I had other houses and stuff, I had no place to put it. So it's come on, get in there fast. Let's see, where's a better picture of
Oh my God.
boxes and boxes. They just chew through everything.
But well, I tell you what, I had hogs. I raised pigs. So I had lots.
Well, yes. How many pigs when you had the most pigs? How many pigs did you have?
What on the sales?
Yeah.
I could regulate that. I had 12.
Okay.
No more than 12. 10 to 12. You can feed them
Mm-hmm.
properly and breed them in the right way,
Right.
where they don't have too many.
Right.
You take a sow that's undernourished, it's skinny,
Yep.
and they're bred like that.
Yeah.
They'll have too many.
Right.
I mean, it's this way. And then if one's too fat,
Right.
If one's too fat, they won't have maybe 5, 6, 7. So when you breed them, the day you breed them 3 days after you take the pigs away from them, and you got to keep their weight maintained during that time, and then you can breed them back 3 days. 3 days they'll come in heat.
Right.
And I always had boars. I put a boar in the morning, and he bred her. And then in the afternoon, I put a different one in.
Right.
He bred her.
Right.
And but
So would you sell the meat?
what I did, I studied myself. I got an education in that. But you know what they are now? They belong to the Chinese.
Yeah.
Every single hog in this country
Right.
is Chinese owned.
Right.
And
But see, when people say things like that, right, they have to realize that it's not separate countries. We live in a corporate world.
we're getting ready to.
We're there. We've been there.
Yeah.
We've been there. Come on, we've been there. It's been that way since our founding fathers.
Yeah,
basically.
you know what you are? You're nothing but a carbon source, and you need to go
Yeah, but we're all
real quick.
we live on a carbon world.
And you need to go.
We're
Get out of here.
we're all
They're
carbon.
wanting to kill 90% of it
I know.
because they're fools.
I know.
And I tell you what I think it is. It's an antichrist that's getting ready to come.
But see, the thing is, I have to keep saying this. God is unconditional love, right? So he loves us no matter what we do. But we are chuckleheads, right? And Satan can't do anything except tempt us. The Antichrist is our ego, that we think we're so hot, we're so good, we can do anything we want. Satan's not doing that. We're doing that. These wars, Satan's not doing. We're doing this. All the people dying from the crap that's in our food. You know, I can go down that Dollar
And
General.
that MAR.
Yes, I can just say,
Back
that'll
food.
kill you, that'll kill you, that'll kill you, that'll kill you, that'll kill you. There isn't one thing in the Dollar General that won't kill you. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. This place has always been a corporate scene. Every war has been a corporate scene. There's no.
Oh yeah, it come out today that George W. Bush
Yeah.
ordered the bombing strike
Uh-huh.
on Iraq, I guess it was,
Yeah.
the day before 9/11.
I know.
Yeah.
They knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And back 2 days before 9/11 happened, so Bill Clinton was the only president in the 20th century who ever had a balanced budget, and he brought the deficit down to just $60 billion. He had a balanced budget for 4 years straight, right?
Yeah. Well, no.
No, he did. He did.
Yeah, but there was another president too.
Well, there are others that when
Andrew
life
Jackson
right,
paid
when-
the national debt off,
when life
and he
was
hated him. He hated paper money.
well, he didn't appreciate. He wasn't the corporate guy that Mr. Jefferson was, and that Mr. and
Well, Andrew Jackson, he hated paper money, and it's like today, this money we have,
it's worth nothing.
it's paper.
It's paper. It's
And
not
we
backed
owe
by anything.
$37 trillion,
But that
and we're
doesn't-
paying interest
but-
on to nothing.
But see, the thing is,
And it's that bloody bunch of British people over
yes,
there.
yes, in the city of London, yes. And, I mean, this stuff. It's not like a cabal or hidden, but no one seems to want to look at it, and they're much happier to find a nice little, Fox News or MSNBC. They're all the same. They just kind of
Who do you
corral
listen to?
no one.
Well, listen,
I read
listen
books.
to Alex Jones. Alex Jones.
I like Alex. I
Alex Jones
I
is
knew
right.
I knew Alex pretty well personally, but no, there's if you like Alex Jones, there's two things on social media. There's a thing called alternative radio. You know what's? Do you ever listen to WETS from ETSU?
Yeah, I used to support them and everything.
They're still a great channel because they're not just lefties. They pretty much give everyone a fair shake at stating what it is, and they're not like other public radio stations that just get stuff from NPR. They have a
I
great.
used to like NPR years ago. And I'll tell you this, my daddy was a good Democrat.
Yes. Well, Democrats, see, people don't
And
realize.
he was a war veteran, World War II veteran. He was through the Mideast.
Yep.
He was in Israel when there wasn't nothing there but sand.
Right. Well, I was there then too, and there were more than sand there. But
Well, I've got pictures where he's over there, and he was I'd ask him, I'd say, Daddy, what'd you do when you go? I just done what everybody told me.
yeah,
Like what? I've seen pictures though, and he was in the supply line. See, the supplies come in the Mediterranean,
right,
and they went across the Iranian mountain.
right, which is unbelievable. I mean, if we ever get into a war with Iran, we'll never get them out of those mountains.
And them supplies went across that mountain and went into Russia.
Right.
And they supplied Stalin.
Right.
And that's what Daddy's job was. Okay. I said, Daddy, did you drive a truck? No, I didn't drive a truck. What'd you do? Well, I didn't know.
Yeah.
He never would tell me. But he had these badges and stuff.
Yeah.
He had these little rifles with the little
Yeah.
keys.
So he was doing stuff that
He was a spy, a sniper or
Yeah.
something.
So it's and that's how it's always been. There is no good war. The rich man always wins until can you see the people in the 3 counties here ever kind of coming together? When we had the big flood, people kind of came together, right?
What big flood?
In September, the big flood.
Oh yeah. Well,
I mean,
our government didn't even show up.
No, we had to. Over at Little Milligan. Have you been over
You
there?
live over there?
Huh?
You live over Little
Yeah,
Milligan?
yeah.
I live in Butler, out Piercetown Road.
Uh-huh.
Man, I'm gonna tell you something. That Cove Ridge Mountain
Yeah.
saved me. I seen it. Golly.
See.
I got up in the morning and
Yeah.
I seen that thing. The rain was coming like this.
Yep. Straight at you.
Straight at me. And I stood there and it got barely started getting daylight.
Right.
And I went down, so I lived near the lake. You know, it's the end of the park.
Yeah.
I went to the lake and I've never seen that full. It's getting ready to run over.
Yeah.
And
And they had emptied it. It was like almost bone dry 2 days before.
Well, the day or two before,
It
people were
rained.
saying,
Yeah.
the lake's down so low. I
Yeah,
said,
right.
man, when I grew up, the lake was way down there. I used to grow 20, 30 acres of corn
Yes.
below the water, under the water.
Yep.
Now, they keep it too full now.
Yes.
We see that from
Yeah.
that. And I don't believe that storm is natural.
No. You know what it was?
Chemtrails.
I
and stuff
went
like
to, well, they have more exotic things. They have these, it changes the electromagnetic field around the planet. So the Earth is a planet of water. I mean, you're like 80% water. Everything is water, right?
that. Yeah.
And you can take the molecular structure of any atom and move an electron or a proton this way. It'll go from solid to a gas to a water. Pretty much everything will do that if you give it enough.
Yeah, if it has 3 states.
Right.
2 or 3 states.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what our flooding was. I met a guy in Boone. Boone always gets flooded, so they were somewhat prepared, but they still got whacked. And I went to this conference on that event, and I met a hydrologist, a guy who studies the flow of water under the earth. And he said that all the trees, like up in Pogie, they exploded out of the ground because the water pressure in the ground.
So that's what happened in the Great Flood. Water come up.
Yeah.
And you know,
And it didn't come from the sky. It wasn't like raining for days and days.
I
It
don't
just,
wonder if, man, I'm telling you.
yeah, because we are made, when there's more, we're all water. And it's just what state
Well,
it's in.
Genesis says, you know, when God in the creation
Right.
says that He made water above us,
Right, and
water
below us. Right. And that's still there.
and it don't say nothing about the world being round.
No,
either.
no, exactly. So I worked for,
I'm sort of a flat earther anymore.
well, see, the thing is, it's neither round or flat. There's another state that we don't understand. And yet here we are living on it. And that's why. So if you look at it from one perspective, did you ever see that optical illusion where there's a piece of grass there and I'm standing here and you're standing over there? When you're standing over there, you look like you're 12 feet tall. You walk over and I look like I'm 1.5 feet. And we just walk across. Right now, I look like I'm 12 foot tall. Do you ever see that? There's usually, if you're interested in magic and optical illusions, they have this. There's places around the earth that light gets bent differently.
So what?
Light gets bent differently. Light from the sun bends, right? And so if you're in a place that has certain minerals and deposits and energies going on inside of it, it can do strange things. And now they've studied all this stuff to the point where they can reproduce. Like nuclear weapons are nothing compared, like all the big fires that were in California. So I used to be a fireman, right? And I fought a couple of forest fires. And they don't burn in a straight line. They follow the topography of the ground. And so these fires were in places where they're mountains. So the fire should be like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking from a satellite, it was this, a straight line.
Oh, really?
Not only was it a straight line, most fires burn about somewhere between 280 to 500 degrees, right? 500 is about the highest. So when it burns, the stuff goes up in the air, maybe goes a mile and then falls down, right? The stuff that, like in Canada, they had a similar fire, right? So the line was 1,000 miles long, and the smoke from that fire traveled 2,800 miles to New York City. The only way that could happen was that fire was burning at about 3,800 degrees. Yeah. And so the matter that was burnt up was like microscopic. So it had no weight, so it didn't fall down. It went really high up into the jet stream and hit New York.
Yeah, it
And
happened here a few years ago. Two years ago, I guess.
Yes, it was 2 years ago.
There was a guy burning a big brush pile on top of my hill.
Yeah.
I looked up. It's my big old brush pile.
Right.
And I was scared to death to set fire to it. I'm afraid of fire. And my neighbor down there got this guy said to trim his underbrush, he said. And he said, I'll put him on your brush pile I'm going to burn your brush pile for you. Yeah, go ahead. So Tristan Robinson done it.
Uh-huh.
Tristan had the biggest fire up there you ever seen. And that was when that Canadian smoke come in.
Yeah.
I went up there and I said, Tristan, you smoked up the whole Doe Valley. It's going all the way down the city. He said, no, it's coming out of Canada. I said, it's coming out of this way. I pulled his leg a little bit.
Well, you see, look at the flag there, right? You should never burn any trash or anything if the wind is blowing just that little. Wind can take a fire like
yeah. That's true.
Yeah. I enjoyed being a fireman, but I'm not an adrenaline junkie. Everyone in my
I got burned out one time, and
your house got burned?
Yeah. What happened? I got up. I didn't have no power. Didn't have no electricity.
Uh-huh.
And it's wet, and I had tobacco patches, and so I said, I'll go reset tobacco. That way I don't have to carry water.
Right.
I had plans full, so I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go reset tobacco.
Uh-huh.
And of course, I was going to go work in the mud, put the worst clothes I had on. I went out there in that tobacco patch, and she come along in a little car and stopped up in the road and said, the house is on fire, and took off. And I went over there, and the electricity coming in as a trailer. So there's pull, and I pulled that plug out, and it just hushed. And so but the power company was down there. That's the reason my power was off. And then went down to this pole below my barn.
Uh-huh.
My barn was between my house and my trailer. And Ned went down there and cut the power off to do something up in the hall.
So it's back.
So when they come back, there's a transformer on that pole.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a transformer they could see on my barn.
Right.
And that on my, so what it was, it come out 7,200.
Yes.
And then they cut it down to
220.
220 to come into the barn, but they didn't leave my trailer out of the.
So the trailer was getting 7,200.
They throwed 7,200 up.
So the utility company paid for that?
No, they denied it. They wouldn't. They said they didn't have nothing to do.
And that's what I'm saying. We live in a corporate.
Anyway, they said they didn't do it. That it wasn't their fault.
Right.
So I called my insurance company and I told them what happened. Well, the insurance company man come. He didn't come see me. He didn't look me up. And he
went to the utility guy. He went to the utility guy.
He went up there and he called me and he said, "If you tell this, I'll deny it." He said, "Your insurance man's up here at REA," and he said, "I'm sorry what happened." I said, "That's fine." He said, "But I can't say no more than that." And I said, "Well, I won't tell on him, man.
Right.
I won't tell on him, man.
I just want to check."
And I just figured God's will. And
so the insurance company pay him?
No, they didn't even call me or anything. Well, when they got back down to Nashville, that's where he's at. I called and I said, "I hear where you've been up here." I said, one of my neighbors, because they did. One of my neighbors said that you was looking for me. I said,
"I was right here.
I was here." And he said, "Oh, well, I'll come up there and I'll talk to your neighbor." He said, "I just didn't see anything suspicious, wrong, and everything." And I said, "What they tell you up at the REA office?" He'd hushed a little bit then. And then he lied. He said, I didn't go
up there, yeah.
And I said, "Well, I think you did, and you know you did.
Right.
And
So how
So-
much were you out?
so what it was, I borrowed the money at the bank and just financed the thing 3 years back in them days.
Yeah,
I thought,
back in the good old days.
I thought we was gonna build a house, so we just bought that just to live
Right.
until I got the house built. I thought it'd be a pretty good little asset too.
Right.
So I got the insurance with the bank. The bank insured themselves, not
Right.
me. And I only got that. I got nothing
Right.
after paying the extra.
So you know,
But they had to pay me.
did the firemen come and put it out?
Yeah.
Right. So when they do that, they have to, meaning every fire has to have a reason for what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so they have it down to a science. So I used to
They-
do that.
This was a Butler Fire Department. They only had one truck. And it
Right,
was
right. So they
whoever
weren't in
hanging
that.
out.
Right. So they
No,
weren't
they didn't.
because there are whenever so I was a master electrician. Even when I was a fireman, I was a master electrician, and my job in the fire was first thing straight out of the truck, I would go over to the meter, pull the meter, so there'd be no electricity in the building when they're shooting water at it, right?
Yeah.
And then I had
So
one
you
of
just had a disconnect, a trailer. You
Right.
know?
so I would do that. But there were a number of electric fires, and you could see, meaning if a piece of wire gets fried, and you can, it's got X kind of insulation and it's this gauge of copper and it is toasted, just like crumpled, melted. You can scientifically tell how many volts went through that wire to make it do that.
I'll tell you what that had. From the meter up to the
mast.
It cut just like you'd took a gas torch and went all the way down. It cut it in two all the way down to the meter.
Right.
And didn't trip.
Right.
So
Because it was on a fuse of a high voltage.
yeah.
So it was burning 15,000 volts through your mast.
It's 7,200.
Okay.
Yeah. It was.
Well, those guys are between 9 pounds. And the other strange thing about our utility companies, they can vary the frequency. You hear about hertz. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if they make it higher, they can push more volts through that, right? And so they can, without having to make their system bigger, they can put more houses and businesses. But it's a double good thing for them because by doing that, the amount of kilowatts that are used when you have it at that frequency makes it look like you've used 4 times more.
Yeah.
So they are saving money on the fuel burning, right? And they are charging 4 times more than what it should be. And they're destroying the system. So have you ever driven around? So there's a transformer. And you've seen a transformer like that, and the bottom is black. You ever see that?
Yeah.
That's what they did. They upped the frequency, and that we call transformers like that pots because there's a liquid in there, it's a dielectric, and when you up the frequency, it boils it alive.
Yeah.
Right? And it basically destroys the system. So that's why our utility systems across America are totally screwed.
They are.
They are just like that far from just collapsing and never coming back. So how do you think America is going to deal with no electricity?
No. Well, like, I got a degree in instrumentation technology and
really?
engineering. Yeah. But when I was going to school, every time I get a break in between, I just take an electrical course. I go over with electricians.
Yeah.
And there was a guy over at Red Phillips. He was the instructor.
Yeah.
I just had one.
Well, I remember him. He was an inspector.
Red Phillips.
Yeah.
And I went.
Because I used to work for a lot of different electricians around here because I was a guy who would show up on time and I knew what I was doing and I had the right tool and I would bring the right hardware and not have to.
I remember the first day I went in his class, he said, "Pierce, what are you doing in here?" I said, "I had a free hour. I thought I'd come over here and hang out with you. It's all right." He said, "Non-major."
Another major.
And he picked on me the whole time. He'd say, "You electrician, you, hey, old non-major over here, Pierce, non-major."
Right.
He'd pick on me.
But you probably knew more than the other people in that class.
Well, he taught me an awful lot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, he was one of the best professors in the whole school, but they wouldn't admit it, them other guys. But,
so when did is he still around?
No, I think he died a long time ago.
A long time ago? I must be getting old.
He had this thing in there.
Where did you do that? At ETSU or at high school?
Northeast State.
Northeast State.
See, it used to be Northeast Technical
School, yeah.
And it was started by a guy. Well, his name was Pierce, but no kin to me at all. But he was out of Eastman, so he started a chemical school over.
Right.
Well, chemical and electronics go hand in hand up till they get.
And same like plastic. Plastic is made from the discharge of electricity into natural gas. It's like alchemy,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how plastic. I mean, they do other things, but that's the basic thing that plastic is.
Yeah. And he started that, and then that school, when it was a technical school, if you went over there and you didn't make a grades,
right,
they're tough. Get out of here.
Right.
We'll never see you again.
Yeah,
They didn't care.
Right.
But then they started adding stuff like they got secretarial science, and they got some other things like that.
Right.
And then they just kept on till they made it a community college.
Right.
Now
that's what it is now.
Now they had like 1,800, 900,000.
Well, what that is
now they got 6,000.
They are like lining kids up to go to mainstream college or get a job.
Yeah, but they lost
the quality of teaching.
I had a little because there was a teacher one time I had, this little smart aleck, but every once in a while we'd talk pretty good.
Right.
He comes in, he said, I got something I want all of you to see. I got ETSU's test on whatever we was doing, sine waves or something.
Right.
I've got it right here. And he put it up on the board.
Right.
And it was like, everybody in there was looking at it and said, "Is that all it is?" He said, "That's it. That's it." We got more done in 2 weeks than they did the whole
semester.
Yeah. And we was right up as good, if not better, than Tennessee Tech down Cookville.
Right.
On electronics, electricity, and the instrumentation.
So when you were doing it, were they using SCRs?
When I was doing it, they wasn't even no operating systems.
Really?
No. There was MS-DOS
and
that kind of stuff.
And which was a waste of time for any kind of instrumentality.
But I hate that stuff anyway. I wouldn't have done it anyway. I don't.
Well, it's not my forte at all. And when I worked, I always had someone who knew all about this. I just used it as a hammer.
Some of the students I went to school with, there was a couple of them. They made big time money.
Yeah.
And all they done was sit around and worked on Pac-Man and birds that flap their wings.
Right.
Look, I can make a bird. And they were into that stuff and the pixels and all that stuff. And I wasn't interested in that. I know I was in that because I was already working. I worked full time. I worked on the.
Did you ever work at Eastman?
No, I didn't work at Eastman. I've been in Eastman a few times.
Eastman, if people knew what they did there,
they do everything.
They have the single largest liquid natural gas tank in the frigging world.
Yeah.
If that ever blew up, it would take everything out from here to Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
the whole
especially
Roanoke Valley would be.
Well, it used to be. Let's see, British Aerospace owns it now.
Right.
My daughter worked there. She's got a degree in engineering, and she worked at British Aerospace, and you had to have security and all that stuff. She knows her stuff.
Yeah.
I called her one day. I said, "What are you doing, Monica?" And she said she's pumping acid, and it was kind of acid that was, if fire hit it, it exploded.
Yeah.
She said she's pumping acid, and I said, "What kind of pump she use?" I said, "What's the volume of it?" She said, "It's coming out of a train car."
Yeah.
And I'm pumping it in here, and they had a furnace down there, 7 stories high, and this acid come out and hit a crucible, and that crucible, burned it.
Right.
And then the acid went back off, and they retrieved it, and built it back up. But what was left in the crucible was the same bombs that if I could think of the name of it, they used it for these bombs, like roadside bombs and stuff over in
Yes, improvised
yeah.
explosive, right?
It was those things, that kind of material.
Explosive,
I forget the name of the material, but it's that kind of material. One time, when Trump was president last time, that Soleimani or whatever, that rapist, that idiot come out there. And this rocket come from who knows where. Boom!
Yeah.
Blowed him all to pieces.
Yep.
And it didn't leave nothing but it hit a car like that. It vaporized the metal.
Yep.
And the only thing it do
the
is
tires
leave the rubber laying.
Yep.
And it was that same material.
And that's the kind of bombs that Israel has been using on the children and women in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
2,000-pound bomb. It blows up about 50 feet before the ground and vaporizes everything half the size of a football
when
field.
Mel told me one time a while back that they started it when it first started in the Gaza Strip.
Right.
I said, Mel, them people are gone. Not just a few of them, all of them. They're gone.
Yeah, they're going to kill them
because that's prophecy.
Right. It's the other thing is, there's prophecy, but there are people who you've heard of Zionism, right?
Yeah.
And you heard of Jews. Zionists aren't Jews. They're a political entity, right? And they're like the Nazis.
This JFK stuff that come out. If people don't know it, but now they're not interested.
Right.
But a lot of stuff come out. Israel was in on that too.
Big time.
Right. Because they didn't like Kennedy because he wouldn't give them a bomb.
Right. Yep. So it's and that's the real story, is that why I like Donald Trump is, first off, when everyone was going on and on about him.
Trump fan, I am too, but I think he's got
a
lot more than he can.
No, but see, the thing is, Donald Trump lies so much, he tells the truth. I used to work for the guy in New York, right? So I know the guy, and he is just a total pinhead. It's all about me, right?
Yeah, he seems that way. Yeah.
And so, but if you take everything that go all the way back to Bill Clinton's the only guy who, in the last 70 years, balanced the budget.
Well, who's Bill Clinton's daddy?
Question mark. Because his mother.
It's all one big old family.
Right. It is. They're all interrelated. Every single one. Even Obama is in their bloodline.
You see?
Yes.
And I voted for him twice. And he just kept
doing
the lies just kept slipping out.
Yes.
Now he's the biggest liar.
Yes, he ever was. He was you just have to, he came from being an activist to a state legislator to being a senator for that state and then president. He did that in 3 years. He came from no political anything to being president in 3, because he looked good, spoke well, could crack a joke, but all these people are funded by other people. Donald Trump is basically just a game show host.
Well,
he's nothing any special.
He's got the balls.
No, he's reading a script, and the bottom line of the script is within a year or so, the United States has been broke since World War II. We've just been doing this.
Well, Eisenhower wonders that. I listened to what he tried to warn us about.
Right.
And he tried to warn us about things.
You know who was really good was who's the little guy who was ran for president against Bill Clinton and George H. What's his name?
Yeah, little squeaky.
Yeah, exactly. He was 100% right.
Yeah, but well, that's the thing about Trump. He's a lot more aggressive. You have to admit, he is really aggressive this time than what he wasn't last time. But I don't think that there's so much deep state out there. I think we're doomed.
We were already doomed, and we've been doomed for a long time.
It's just like I got my number one thing, and if I was sitting here with RFK and all these people, I'd say number one, and I've expressed this. Number one is human trafficking,
right,
and number two is chemtrails,
right,
and then
we got other things to look
mix
at.
them up.
Right.
But human trafficking, that there's probably 1,400 children dying
every day,
a day by a bunch of people that would rape a baby to death.
I know, but it's not just. See, the one thing that it's hard for Americans to understand.
And they got time to fool around and wait on something to happen.
So the thing that's really disturbing is that our government isn't our government. It's a transnational government. It's a global.
Bill Gates.
Right. And the people who really.
Schwab,
yes. Again, people who run this place, those people are just poster boys. Like Elon Musk, he's a poster boy. All those billionaires in the cabinet. Donald Trump is a poster boy. None of these people are really in charge.
Yeah, I think they could say to Elon, you missed the class.
He's doing exactly what they want him to do.
But I'll tell you something that my experience, and it's just coincidental. When I worked up here at Burlington, when I worked at Kennemel, I worked at Kennemel 28 years, the best company in the world. And they bought processes, metal coating processes. They bought that technology, and it wasn't in competition with nobody.
Right.
It was, so the stuff I worked on was Russian technology.
Right.
But we had it in Johnson City.
Right.
But the way we got it, we went to Switzerland.
Right.
Went to Switzerland.
That's what I'm saying. None of it's not just America first. No.
And I stayed in it. It was a place called Liechtenstein.
Yes, that's a beautiful place.
Little bitty place. Yeah, I know the whole country.
Yeah,
I know.
Did you go there?
Oh yeah, I stayed there. They'd send me over if I had like a 1 week's work to do. If I had an easy 1 week's work to do, it would be a month or 5 weeks. I mean, it was like them people, Americans are the best workers in the world. They would fool around. That bunch over there would.
Yeah.
And then they actually thought they were the smartest people in the world.
Of course. Well, that's like the kiss of death. When you think you're the smartest guy, that's the kiss of death. But
anyway, what I was getting to there,
right?
This new world order, the economic world.
But it's the same old world order.
Okay. They meet at this place called Davos.
Yes, I know. I've been there. Yeah.
I've been there.
Right.
Okay. I didn't even know I'd been there. I thought, where the heck are they doing? What? Davos, it's in Switzerland.
Right.
I've been all over the place. I know Switzerland over the half.
Yeah.
So I got down and look at, what we called it when we was over there? Heidi Land.
Right.
So that's where Heidi, the little Heidi store.
Yeah.
Up in Heidi Land. And there was a military base up there, a Swiss military base. And they just put on the dog. And they got some nice jets, so.
Yeah.
And there was places up there, and there's nothing up there. And now they bound. Then I've wondered this: where's the airport? Of course, I asked that question when I was up there because this guy he thought he was smarter than Einstein, and and all Americans are ignorant.
Yeah.
And I sort of got the policy if they come looking for ignorance,